Another day, another troubling headline about FBI Director Kash Patel's use of taxpayer money. Government emails obtained by the Associated Press show Patel was allowed to snorkel at the Pearl Harbor Memorial in Hawaii last summer, one of the nation's most hallowed sites. As one Marine veteran trained to check on the site put it, it's like having a bachelor party at a church. At the time, the FBI had insisted Patel was there on official business. What they didn't say was that Patel returned to Hawaii later for 2 more days, and that's when he went on that private snorkeling excursion. It is the latest in a pattern of Patel blending professional responsibilities with leisure activities on the taxpayer's dime.
Imagine telling the families of Pearl Harbor that the place where more than 1,100 American sailors and Marines died is now suitable for a private VIP snorkeling trip. Not a museum tour, not a wreath-laying ceremony, not a solemn official visit. A snorkeling excursion around the USS Arizona Memorial, while FBI Director Kash Patel was traveling on official FBI business, with government emails now raising new questions about taxpayer resources, restricted access, and basic moral judgment. That is the kind of headline that does not just make people angry, it makes them stop and ask a much darker question. When did public service become a backstage pass for people in power? Pearl Harbor is not a luxury resort. The USS Arizona is not a photo op location. It is a war grave, a sunken military cemetery, a place where American bodies still rest beneath the water because history did not give them the option to come home. And that is why this story hits differently, because Kash Patel is not some random tourist who wandered into the wrong area with a rental mask and bad judgment. He is the director of the FBI, the man leading one of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the United States. His job is supposed to represent discipline, restraint, seriousness, and respect for rules. But according to the reporting, what the public is being asked to process is an FBI director mixing official travel with a rare, private-style experience at one of the most sacred military sites in America. So let's frame this correctly from the beginning. This is not just about snorkeling. This is about power-touching a memorial and forgetting what that memorial means. It is about a government official standing near the dead and somehow still making the moment feel like it belongs to him. And once that line is crossed, the real question becomes brutally simple. If Kash Patel cannot recognize sacred ground, how can the public trust him with sacred authority? Now put this in prosecutorial mode, because the polite version of this story is already too soft. The first receipt is the location. Pearl Harbor is not a beach club with a memorial nearby. The USS Arizona Memorial sits above a battleship where more than 1,100 American sailors and Marines died during the Japanese attack in 1941. That ship is still their resting place, which means every inch of that water carries a weight that no VIP badge, no federal title, and no political connection should ever be allowed to cheapen. The second receipt is the access. According to the reporting, snorkeling and diving near the USS Arizona are not treated like normal tourist activities. They are heavily restricted, usually connected to preservation work, official surveys, or rare ceremonial purposes involving the remains of survivors who wanted to be reunited with their shipmates. So the question is not, did Kash Patel enjoy a swim? The question is, who decided that the FBI director should receive an experience that ordinary Americans would never be offered at a military cemetery? That is where the contradiction starts to smell. If this was official FBI business, then what exactly was the law enforcement purpose of snorkeling around the USS Arizona? Was there a national security briefing underwater? Was there a counterintelligence threat hiding behind the coral? Or are we looking at the much simpler, uglier explanation? A powerful official was in Hawaii. Someone opened a door that should have stayed closed, and sacred ground became a private privilege. And this is not happening in a vacuum. The source material also points to a broader pattern around Kash Patel's public conduct. A government plane controversy tied to a personal event, beer-chugging optics during overseas travel, and now a VIP-style excursion at Pearl Harbor, while the public is told to treat it as just another headline. One incident can be dismissed as bad optics. 2 incidents become a judgment problem. 3 incidents start looking like a management style. That matters because Kash Patel is not leading a small publicity office. He is leading the FBI. This is the agency responsible for counterterrorism, organized crime, espionage, cyber threats, public corruption, and some of the most sensitive law enforcement work in the country. The person sitting in that chair is supposed to understand that perception is not a decoration. It is part of institutional legitimacy. When the FBI director appears to treat official travel like a personal itinerary with government muscle behind it, the damage is not cosmetic. It tells every agent below him that standards are flexible when power is high enough. It tells every taxpayer that their money may be treated like background funding for someone else's lifestyle. It tells every military family that even the most solemn places can be bent into a VIP experience when the right person asks. And it tells the public that the same government that lectures ordinary citizens about rules may be quietly building exceptions for the people closest to power. That is the moral core of this scandal. The problem is not that Kash Patel got wet. The problem is that the water was part of a grave. The problem is that the setting was Pearl Harbor, the symbol was sacrifice, the office was the FBI, and the behavior looked like entitlement wearing a federal title. In any serious system, that would not be brushed off as a quirky travel story. It would be treated as evidence of a deeper failure of judgment. The first major point is the insult to national memory. Pearl Harbor is not powerful because politicians visit it. Pearl Harbor is powerful because ordinary Americans died there before they ever knew their names would become part of history. The USS Arizona does not need a VIP guest to give it meaning. It already has meaning because more than 1,100 sailors and Marines were trapped inside a burning battleship. And America built a memorial above that wreck to say one thing clearly. This place is not entertainment. So when Kash Patel's name gets attached to a VIP snorkeling excursion around that site, the issue becomes bigger than one man's poor taste. The second major point is the ethics of public office. A normal citizen cannot walk into a sacred restricted site and say, "I want the special version." A regular FBI agent would probably be warned, disciplined, or quietly destroyed by internal standards if he tried to use his government position for personal privilege. Former FBI officials in the source material make that very point. Agents are trained early that even small personal benefits tied to government power are dangerous. That is why the deli sandwich example matters, even though it sounds almost comical at first. If getting extra meat because of your badge is treated as improper, then what exactly do we call a rare snorkeling excursion at a military grave? That contradiction is impossible to ignore. The FBI is built on rules, procedure, evidence, and the idea that nobody is supposed to stand above accountability. The director of the FBI should be the walking symbol of that standard, not the exception that makes the standard look fake. When the person at the top appears to benefit from access that ordinary people cannot get, the entire chain of command absorbs the message. The message is not spoken out loud because corruption rarely announces itself with a microphone. The message is quieter and more poisonous. Rules are strict for the little people, flexible for the powerful, and invisible for the politically protected. The third major point is institutional trust. Americans already live in a country where confidence in government feels thinner every year. People see investigations, hearings, classified briefings, internal memos, public statements, and then they watch officials act as if the institutions belong to them personally. That is why this story sticks. It gives people an image they can understand instantly. The FBI director, on official travel around Pearl Harbor, receiving treatment that looks less like service and more like privilege. You do not need a law degree to understand why that feels wrong. And that is where the moral contrast becomes sharp. On one side, there are the dead sailors and Marines of the USS Arizona. Men who did not choose the hour of their sacrifice. Men whose families inherited grief instead of explanations. On the other side, there is a living official with power, security, staff, access, aircraft, titles, and the kind of doors that open only when someone important is standing in front of them. The dead cannot object. The ship cannot speak. The water cannot file a complaint, and maybe that is exactly why people in power need stronger judgment, not weaker judgment, when they enter places like this. Because sacred places depend on restraint. They depend on the basic understanding that some lines should not have to be enforced by police tape. A cemetery does not become less sacred because nobody is standing there yelling at you. A war grave does not become fair game because someone with authority found a way to arrange access. And a public official does not prove leadership by taking every privilege offered to him. He proves leadership by knowing which privileges to refuse. That is what makes this case so damaging. It is not just the act itself, it is the instinct behind the act. The instinct says, I can. Public service is supposed to answer, but should I? That missing pause is the real evidence. And when the director of the FBI appears to lose that pause, the country is not looking at one awkward travel story anymore. It is looking at a warning sign about the culture of power itself. And this is where the story has to leave the gossip column and enter the moral record. Because the lesson here is not complicated. Power does not become honorable simply because it wears a federal badge. A title does not make judgment better. A security detail does not turn entitlement into duty. And the director of the FBI should know, better than almost anyone in government, that the public does not trust institutions because of slogans. The public trusts institutions because the people inside them show restraint when nobody can force them to. My personal view is simple. This kind of conduct is dangerous because it teaches the country the wrong lesson about leadership. It teaches people that sacred rules are negotiable if your office is big enough. It teaches young agents that discipline is a speech given to the lower ranks, not a standard applied to the top. It teaches taxpayers that official travel can quietly bend into personal experience. And worst of all, it teaches military families that even a place built over the bodies of fallen Americans can be treated like a backdrop for someone else's privilege. That is why Pearl Harbor matters here. The USS Arizona is not just steel underwater, it is grief preserved in public view. It is history refusing to disappear. It is a reminder that some Americans gave everything before they ever got to ask what their government would become after them. So when a powerful official approaches that place, the only acceptable instinct is humility. Not access, not excitement, not VIP treatment, humility. And that is the real conclusion. This is not only about Kash Patel, and it is not only about one snorkeling trip. It is about whether public office still means service, or whether it has become a private membership card for people close enough to power. Because once sacred ground can be treated casually, sacred authority is already in trouble. So the final question is this: if the people trusted to protect the law cannot even protect the dignity of a war grave, what exactly are they protecting? Like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who still believes accountability should apply at the top, and subscribe for more sharp breakdowns of the moments powerful people hope you ignore.